So, why are some motion designers able to quickly concept style frames while others are unable to even gather their thoughts? Or how do some motion designers easily design style frames while others can't draw a stick figure to save their life? And why are some people able to deliver pro level style frames very quickly while others are spending countless hours on mediocre design? In this free workshop, I'm going to share the answers to these questions and more so you too can design pro level style frames. Hey there, my name is Cameron. I'm the founder of Motion Science. I'm also the creator of Stylecraft, and I am a pro motion designer with over 2 decades. That's right, 2 decades of pro experience. Welcome to my brand new video workshop, How to Design Style Frames. In this first video, we're going to discover a simple process for concepting style frames. This is very important, and it's immediately going to help you improve and move forward in creating style frames. Once you get this process down, you're going to start experiencing an overall easier approach to style frame design. And it's really easy. So, today I'm going to show you the concepting process where we're going to collect your thoughts, we're going to gather assets for style frame design so that you can have an easy process for the design process, an easy process for style frame design. So if you're a junior motion designer, but you aren't sure how to really start, or you're a mid level motion designer that isn't able to create at a pro level, stay with me because you're going to discover how motion designers like you and me can easily create style frames by first starting with concepting. This is critical, and I'm going to explain it. Because right now, you might think you have to be a design prodigy to be considered a pro, but that's absolutely not true. You might have already tried to concept style frames in the past, and it just didn't quite work out the way you'd hoped. There's many reasons for this. One of them may be because you're not a master of Illustrator. Neither am I. Or maybe you didn't go to design school. Neither did I. So you may be wondering, if I can't draw, if I can't become a master of Illustrator, if I did not attend design school, how can I really design style frames? And trust me, I get it. I've heard that little voice of doubt in my head, and it says, "Hey, Cameron, you're an imposter. You're not a true designer." But honestly, I'm here today to show you that you can do this. Anyone can do this. And I want to demystify the process of style frame concepting for you so that this can help save you a lot of time and frustration. So, in this first video, I'm going to share a simple process I developed after years of trial and error. This is something that if you experience resistance when starting style frame design, this is going to help serve as a tremendous resource to eliminate that frustration and that resistance and help you lay a solid foundation for your style frame design. The reason I'm sharing this with you is because I developed this framework because I saw so many motion designers become completely frustrated from the start and kind of go into a panic mode while trying to get their thoughts in order. And to be fully transparent, this was my story too. So when I started out as a freelance motion designer, one day I was asked to design style frames for a company called Digital Kitchen. And like I said, I was a brand new freelancer. I was really good at animation, but I had never designed style frames before. And Digital Kitchen wanted me to deliver a set of style frames to them within a few days. I wasn't even sure I could even do this. And I was upfront with the art director about this because I had never designed style frames before. And to be totally honest, I doubted that I could do this. Like I said, I was honest with that art director because I didn't attend art school. Like this creative director, I knew that he had a lot of design experience, and he was looking for someone who could also design at a high level. So on top of that, I figured I had to have a gift of design, and I didn't know if I had that or not. I had never taken a drawing class. I had never taken any type of art class in my life. So if any of this sounds familiar, let me tell you, I know what it's like to doubt yourself and feel like you're an imposter and that you can't do this. I questioned whether I could even do it. But I was tired of spinning my wheels, and I knew that if I was to lay a solid foundation through concepting, this was going to be the key to getting what I was after in style frames. So I set out to make it happen. So once I got past my objections and I began really investing in myself and laying out this concepting framework, I started really seeing massive growth in my design. My style frame design got much quicker and got a lot easier to do. And essentially, I accomplished what I set out to do. So now I can design style frames very quickly, and I want to teach that to you. So to go through the process of designing style frames, we have to start with concepting. So if you're ready to create more beautiful looking style frames, you're going to love what I'm about to teach you. So, like I said, the purpose of this is to help you quickly get moving in the right direction so that you're not spinning your wheels and you're not getting frustrated and you're just laying a solid foundation for style frame design. So, are you ready? Let's do this. Okay, so when we are concepting style frames, a lot of times what happens is a client will come to us, and it's a client, it's an agency, it's a direct client, it's an agency, it's a production company, whoever it is that you're working for. They're going to come to you and they're going to say, "Here is our creative brief." Okay, and a creative brief can be as something as simple as one sentence. It could be one paragraph. It could be two paragraphs. It could be a one-page PDF. It could be a 10-page PDF. It could be a single image. It could be a video. A creative brief can be a lot of different things. Sometimes a client will come to you and say, "Here's what we're doing." Sometimes the clients can be very abstract, kind of secretive about what they're doing. And that sometimes happened to me when I was working for production companies. They'd say, "Listen, we have a client. Um, this is who the client is, and like let's say it was Disney, right? And Disney wants to do a piece about a video game, but we can't tell you what the name of the video game is. We can't tell you what it's about. We can give you some general ideas, and we need you to create it." And that is more of a, it's more challenging to come up with an idea. But sometimes a client will also come to you and say, "Hey, we have an idea for this, and here's an image, here's something to go off of," and you kind of have free reign to go. So for this particular, and I've talked about creative briefs in more detail in other videos I have out there, in my courses like Stylecraft, and on social media channels. So I'm not going to go and show you a creative brief, but what I'm going to do here is I said to myself, I gave myself a creative brief for the video you're watching now. I said, I want to create something around the idea of the Cold War. Okay. And with everything going on in the world today, it's been an interesting, challenging time for the last several years, actually, the last several decades. And the Cold War has always really intrigued me. So I thought, okay, why don't we do something with the Cold War? So I start with an idea. Okay. And this could be anything, but I'm going to pick an idea around the Cold War. Okay. Now, what you're seeing here is a program called Workflowy, and Workflowy is very cheap, and it's an app that I've used for years, and I absolutely love it. Now, there's 1,000 apps out there. There's 100,000 apps out there for helping you to get your ideas in order. Some people prefer flowcharts. I don't prefer a flowchart. I like this app. So what's cool about this app is I can go into a board mode like this or a bullet point mode, which a lot of times I work in. But we're going to start with an idea. And what I do is I write down, okay, here's my basic idea. I'm going to do the Cold War and something about the atomic age to the space age. And I came up with the atomic age to the space age because I did a little bit of Googling about what are some different aspects of the Cold War, and I found out the Cold War actually went on for many, many, many years. I always think of the Cold War as something that happened in the 70s and 80s. Well, it actually started way before then. And what I do is I like to use sites like Wikipedia, and when I'm researching, I just begin with my idea and I just type in things like Cold War, right? So again, there's a lot of different ways you can do this. I start with Wikipedia, and I started kind of going through some different things about some different aspects of the Cold War, and pretty much settled on an idea. I what I did is I take some of these paragraphs of text and I could just copy Command C on a Mac, and here in my program, I can just Command V and paste, and I've got like, let's say it's a paragraph that was inspiring to me, right? And I just do a little bit of research about the topic I've picked. So you can see there's several paragraphs here, but when I start researching the Cold War, I really was focusing in on more of the space and the war side of the Cold War, because there's different aspects of the Cold War. And that just happened because I was just going through and finding out different information on Wikipedia here and some other sites off Google about what what is the Cold War. So that's the first thing you want to do. You want to start with an idea, and you want to research that idea, and you want to just kind of hone in on certain aspects of that idea that really stand out to you. Okay. The next thing I do, and that could come from you creating the idea yourself, or it can come from a creative brief from a client. It's the same process. If a client tells you we want to focus on the Cold War, it's got to be about the atomic age, moving into the space age. Well, that's even easier because now I can just research that specifically and start finding out different things about the Cold War. So, what I like to do next is I like to start researching certain sites that you see here, for ideas and inspiration to help me kind of push my ideas in a direction. So, everything in design has already been done before. Okay. There's nothing that comes out that's brand new and it's never been done before and we've never seen it before. What's unique about what you design is how you take how what your spin on that approach is, right? And you have to be a creative person. You have to think outside the box. And that's the my most favorite part is actually just getting very creative here and just finding things that really stand out to me and that I'm drawn to and can put my own spin on. So what I like to do is go to these different sites like Pinterest, Behance, Instagram, Google, Reddit. There's a lot more inspirational sites, research sites that inspire me to create. Okay, so the first one here is Pinterest. Okay, and I'm actually on my motion science board for Pinterest. If you don't follow motion science on Pinterest, I would recommend that you do. I put a lot of pins up every single week. I put pins up for motion science, the work that is created through motion science, also work that I find highly inspirational from the world of Pinterest. And I just create boards and I add pins to those boards. And so you're going to get a lot of really good inspiration here. Some of these boards are pretty basic, and I, kind of change things around. But a lot of times I start with my Pinterest boards because these are images that have really inspired me for some particular reason they inspired me enough that I have decided to come back and pin this. Okay. So what I like to do is start here in my Pinterest board and just find um, imagery or animations that inspire me to kind of push me in a direction. Okay. And there's a lot of places I go. A lot of times if I'm working on title design, which is, to me, title design is anything that's imagery involving typography. Okay. And these pieces are going to do that. So I would go into my title design board and I would start looking at different titles I've saved and what about them is interesting to me. Okay. So I'm going to use a board like Pinterest. I'm going to use a site like Behance. Also, what's great about these two sites is if I don't see anything off the top that really inspires me, I'll just go in here and maybe just type in something like Cold War design or Cold War graphic design. So immediately, this stuff is just really cool, right? And it's stuff that inspires me to make something of my own. So I would look at things like, let's say this image right here, for instance. What about this image is interesting to me? Well, it's the way that the texture of the American flag was used inside of this type. Okay, so that stands out to me. I like this image a lot as well. It's the repetition of these guns uh, in their alignment and how they're pointing at the sky. It's very interesting to me. So that's what I would do. I'd also go to Behance. I would search out the same type of stuff, maybe Cold War design, and see what people come up with. I also love Instagram for this kind of stuff. Instagram is it's a little more challenging to search things out here on Instagram, but I always am using Instagram as creative inspiration to me for ways that I want to push my own design work. I also love to go to Reddit. Okay, and um, Reddit is a love hate thing for me. Reddit sometimes, for the most of the time, I should say, Reddit drives me crazy, and some of the posts on here drive me crazy. But there are times that I find inspiration on Reddit. I follow the After Effects community, a Cinema 4D community, motion design, and motion graphics. So I follow four subreddits here on Reddit that sometimes inspire me to create work. Also, there's Google, right? Google's very, I mean, we all know what Google is, right? So I'll sit here and I'll type out Cold War, let's say images. And you can see here immediately, this stuff's really interesting to me. That's really cool. It's, more propaganda style stuff, but really dig that stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start creating references, which is my next step of things that inspire me. And a lot of times for me, creative references end up being one of two things. It could be a mood board, which a mood board is something as simple as taking imagery into Photoshop and just creating one giant board inside of Photoshop and just pasting these images, like let's say this image here into Photoshop, another image from Instagram, and just lay them all out side by side just as an inspirational mood board. I also like to post video links here for animation pieces that inspire me. And I'm looking at these to see, okay, what about this is inspiring to me? So I love, like this is a very short piece. It's only 7, 8 seconds long. But I really like the layout. I like the use of tape. I like the fingerprint effect that's happening here. I like the color scheme, the color palette, the different textures being used. Any of you who have followed motion science for any amount of time know that I absolutely love textures, and textures are a huge part of my work. So this is the kind of stuff I'm looking at, and I'm constantly looking at these pieces, wondering, okay, how is this? Why is this inspirational to me? And what about it do I absolutely love? And what about it can I use in my own work? Okay, so that's the confession tapes. Next, I've got one here for the Manhattan Project promo design. So what I really like about this set of style frames is again the texture. I like the tape texture a lot, the way the type is laid out, the tape over the eyes, the grid pattern back here. Some of this texture, I like the white overlays here. And again, the logo here, some really interesting design elements here. I like the broken glass, the texture here on the side. Click on this third one, pop it up, the endless scare. So this one is in motion. Always thought this piece was really interesting. And just like how it uses like this torn type of texture, the type again, the little birds, the moving texture there. Now, what we're doing with stop frames is we're not animating this, but you have to look at this, even though it's moving. I want you to look at, like when they were designing this would obviously have been like a style frame here, right? So when you're designing style frames, you're thinking about the big picture of the animation, right? And that would have been a style frame. So I'm looking at the layout of that. I really like the redacted text a lot. I've always liked that type of elements. This is cool too. And then I've got a fourth example here, HBO Manhunt. This has been around for a long time. Again, I like the texture and the type, the layout. I'm looking at all this layout here. So I'm not looking so much at the camera motion moving across these, but I'm looking at the way that I like the red type a lot. So I'd probably like to incorporate that. Some different elements here. I like the way that the type, the alignment of the type is here, how it's all top aligned. And then the black and white with just a subtle bit of red type here. So you get the idea. I just will pull up different creative references like this. I'll copy and paste them into my creative reference folder here. And I can always come back and look at this to decide, okay, what do I like from this piece? What do I want to pull from this one? What do I want to pull for this one? Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start looking for assets, right? And actually, before I do that, what I like to do is I just like to type them out here. So I'm just typing out different assets from the different pieces I found that I really were drawn to. We saw the tape, the fingerprint, the paper tears, redacted text, 1 to 3 photos. I don't remember actually why I put that down here. I'm just saying, okay, I know what it was. I'm looking for just some basic photos to use for base elements, which I like to, when I get into photo bash designing, that will play into this. I like the layout for Manhunt, a Russian flag, a USA flag. Again, this is pulling from the Wikipedia stuff. The reference material here in the copy, they talk about Russia a lot. The USA, it's obviously the Cold War is between Russia and the USA. Maybe a blue versus red type of element. Again, the flags, a U-2 spy plane. This is being pulled from this text in here. Stalin, which was the leader of Russia, a map, an Eastern European American maps, a mushroom cloud, because we talk about the atomic age, right? In the atomic age, I always think of like the mushroom cloud with the atomic bombs going off. A line of pointed missiles on USA moved to pointed missiles on the USSR. This is getting more into animation kind of stuff, but this I always think about animation when I'm designing style frames. So I'm just going to list out all the different assets that I want here. And obviously, there's textures, right? I'm not going to list out specific textures, but I know based on these different examples that there's a lot of texture going on. Even in these, you can see the texture happening, right? Texture is a key element in design. And I absolutely love texture. So I'm just going to look for textures in general. Um, just like chalkboards, like one of my favorite ones is going to be chalkboard, right? So I'll write down chalkboard. I also want to look for some grid elements, grid textures, maybe some stone texture, maybe some concrete texture. But I like to just write these out and you want more assets than you're actually going to use. And the more you have to work with, the better. Now, you don't want to overdo it. You don't want to go move forward and say, hey, I'm going to design 2 style frames, which is what we're going to do, and have 100 elements, right? That's too many, but maybe 20 to 25 elements. Maybe that'll be good. I also want to look for things like newspaper clippings. That's something that came to me during the reference stage of this. I should also mention that we are going to design 2 style frames, right? I want 2 style frames because when we're designing style frames, a lot of times we'll be asked to uh, give one idea and then another idea, 2 separate ideas, right? They're still having to do with the Cold War, but I want to show 2 different approaches, 2 different style frames. And then a lot of times, style frame designers, there's multiple style frame designers hired for a job because everyone has their own style. So for me, for motion science, I'm going to create 2 different style frames. So I'm going to take all these different elements and create 2 style frames. Next thing I'm going to do is, since I have a list of assets now, I'm going to go to some of my favorite sites and start pulling some of these assets. So some of my favorite asset sites are Google, which you see up here, Envato Elements, Free Pick, and Turbo Squid, right? And there's also like CG Trader. If I'm getting more into the 3D assets, I'm going to start using some of these Turbo Squid and CG Trader and things like that. But there's 100 more sites, right? You have your favorites. These are just ones they're my go-to. And a lot of times when I'm using Google as an asset site, it's going to lead me to other creative sites where I can pull assets from. So the way I like to work is I don't draw, right? We talked about I don't know how to draw. I've never taken an art class. I do a process called photo bashing, and we're going to talk about that in the next video. But what we're going to do is going to find assets. We're going to find photos. We're going to find vector elements. We're going to find 3D models if we need that from sites like Google, Envato Elements, Free Pick, Turbo Squid, and CG Trader. So just to give you an idea, what I would do here is I'm on Google. We'll start with that. And I just cracked my iPhone screen, which is why that's in here. But we're going to just look up, like, let's say U2 spy plane, right? That was one of my assets I wrote down. And I know the U2 spy plane was a big piece of the Cold War with the US spying. So what I like to do is I'll go into images And here in images, I also like to go to my tools. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to usage rights and I'm going to say labeled for reuse with modification or labeled for reuse. Now, if you're not going to design style frames for commercial use, you can do a non-commercial here, or you can just leave this off completely if this is something for you internally. But if this is something that's ever going to go commercial, you want to have it labeled for reuse with modification or labeled for reuse. Okay, that's just a safe way to go. Sometimes I will also come into size and I'll say I want large, or I'll put in a custom size to have very big. I like to work with larger images. It's just a little bit easier to work with a larger image versus having a tiny image and having to scale it up and it not looking so great. So that is the two keys: is you want a large size, you want reuse with modification, or reuse. And what I'll do is I'll just start going through and scrolling through these and finding YouTube planes that are interesting to me. And a lot of times I'm just going to pull down multiple versions of those YouTube planes and just start building an asset library. Okay. Envato Elements. Let's talk about that one. This is a site I have a subscription to, and I don't remember what I pay, but I pay an annual subscription. And what it gives me access to is stock video, templates, music, sound effects, graphics, photos, so on and so forth. So I could come in here, I could find assets like in the photos and the stock videos. Video, typically, you don't want to use in style frame design because you're going to have to take a video and then take a still frame from that video. Sometimes you have to do that, but this is great for even fonts, things like that. So maybe in here, I'm going to search out like this is a great place to find textures, right? And I'm going to go in and maybe go into these photos and find some textures I want to use and start downloading those and just start building an asset library. This also brings up a great one I didn't put down here on my list, which was Unsplash, Pixabay, Pexels. Again, I could type in something like texture and come in here, and these are all creative common images that you can use for free, and they're really large typically. And I'm just going to start building out assets from this. Maybe I'll type in my chalkboard, right? And I'm going to find a chalkboard texture here, or maybe it's chalkboard texture. Let's see what that pulls. And always keep in mind that you don't have to just keep, like if I want a black and white texture of a chalkboard, and this is, let's say, blue and white, and I think that texture might work, I can always make this black and white, right? It doesn't have to be perfect to begin with. You just want it to have different aspects in it that you're attracted to. I also really enjoy free pick. And for some reason, free pick is not working today. At the time of this recording, here we go, it's working now. I also have a subscription. So free pick is great. You can come in here, you can download assets, a good variety of assets. Sometimes you're going to have to credit the creator unless you have a membership. Once you have a membership here, you can download premium assets as well, which have these crowns. These are not going to be available to people who don't have memberships, but you can download premium assets, the free assets, and you don't have to credit the creator. Okay, so I love free pick a lot. I love Envato Elements a lot for affordable memberships for assets. I've also got Turbo Squid here. This is great for 3D models. Really great stuff here. If I need to use anything for 3D models, I'm going to come here to Turbo Squid. CG Trader, same kind of deal. Very affordable models. I should also mention in Envato Elements here, there is a really cool section here called 3D. And let's just say for whatever reason, I want to use this bike wheel. Well, I can view a 360-degree render of this bike, and I can spin it around to the angle I want for my style frame, and I can download this angle, which is really cool. I can even download the shadow if I want to. So that's something I use sometimes as well. And that's pretty much it. So these are some sites. Like I said, there's also Pixabay. This is a great one for downloading photos and video. And there's also Pexels, which I really like a lot as well. If I can get it to load up here, there's Pexels. Really nice imagery as well. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to categorize all of the images I download into a folder structure just to keep things nice and tidy. And I told you we're going to do two concepts. We're going to do two different style frames. Obviously, both style frames are in the style that I like to create, but they're going to be two different types of images, and you're going to see in the next video what I mean by that. So for concept one, it's a little bit more detailed, and concept two is a little more simpler, which you can see here why it's not divided into all these different folders here, because it is a simpler concept. So we'll talk about concept one here in just a second, but concept two we'll start with. In concept two, I want to go based on some inspiration images I saw. I want to go with like a newspaper type style frame. Okay. And I can see it in my head. I just see these different newspaper clippings kind of floating in 3D space and some lights and shadows and some type. So, what I'm going to do is I pull in a lot of these different images. I found a lot of these on Google. And again, I use my search tools and I found just different newspaper clippings. I may or may not use these. You never know. I'm looking at things like the images, I'm looking at the text, the headlines, the titles of the papers, um, that kind of stuff. This is a really nice one. I'm really drawn to this. It's also got some nice texture to it. What else do we have here? The next one we've got War on the Horizon. That's really nice up in here. It's a little bit textured, too textured for my taste, but we can probably still work with it. What do we have next? We've got the Kansas City Times. This is great. Great headline, great images. This one is really cool because it has the extra headline, War is Over. Now it is blurry, right? This is a lower quality image, but I think we can make this work. We will see though. Again, from the Kansas City Times, US Soviet Sea shutdown waits, sea showdown waits. Very cool. This is a great image. Really like that. It's Defiance. Really nice. Next, we've got a folder here. And in this folder, this is one that I downloaded from, I believe, Free Pick, which is why I have the premium license here, saying like, hey, you don't have to give credit. But this is something I downloaded with the idea that maybe I'd create my own newspaper. And these are made so that you can plug in your own images and things like that. And then we've got, although now looking at that, I don't know why it's, oh, okay, we've got an EPS. Because I'm say a JPEG, you can't open up and really change this. An EPS, you can. And then we've got two more. This is really nice. And oh, this is really, really cool too. I like this one a lot. So that is for concept two. Concept two is going to be what we're going to call our newspaper concept. And then for concept one, we've got imagery that I've downloaded and classified into these different categories. We've got clouds. I thought it'd be cool to maybe use clouds as like an overlay with like the U2 spy plane, because we are going to be using the spy plane. We've got fingerprints. We've got some imagery here, PNG, JPEG, and another JPEG. Really like these last two. Typically, so like for me personally, this is too vector based looking. Now it may work for whatever for other designers, but for me, I typically stay away from vector based artwork that is illustrate AI files and EPS files, because it looks too crisp and digital to me. I like JPEG and PNG files that have that imperfection to them, right? We've also got some maps. I downloaded this map, this AI map, because it's can be scaled up, and we can use it at infinitely scaled. There's an EPS of it. There's also a JPEG. There's a vintage world map that I downloaded as well. And I spent several hours just downloading all of these different assets, which I don't want. I didn't want to show you that whole process because it's a tedious process. It can take. You should always spend on the concepting stage. I recommend that you spend half a day, just half to a full day, just concepting. If you have the time to do it, just coming up with what your initial ideas are going to be and pulling assets, right? Pulling assets is so important because this is an awesome image. Pulling these assets are really going to help me drive my design. I'm going to look at, okay, what have I pulled and how can I make this work in my design? I don't like this one so much because you can tell it's been digitized at some point. It's very vector. That's an awesome image with the color and the contrast. That's a very awesome image as well. I've seen this used in different in magazines and things like that. We've also got some guns I downloaded. Thought that would be kind of interesting to use, possibly. Missiles. What do we have here for missiles? And I'm just hitting the space bar. I'm on a Mac, like I said. That's a really cool image there. And I'm also thinking when I see these images, what can I cut out? What can be cut out and used by itself? I could cut out here, and around here and around this building and have this be its own thing. I could just cut out the fire here in the missile and have the missile be its own thing. This is cool. When I downloaded it, I didn't realize it was a Lego image, right? So you can, if you look closely, it's a Lego image, which is pretty funny. I downloaded it, but if it was very small in our style frame, it's like a very small asset. You could probably get away with using a Lego image, right? Here's another really cool missile that I could come in and kind of cut this out and have it be its own element. I don't have to use this background image or the sky. Here's a really cool time lapse image of a missile coming out of the ground and flying high. Really cool. And then we've got planes here inside of the military. We've got some planes. Here's a U-2 spy plane, a really cool angle. Here's another really cool angle. And then I believe I cut that one out. I just used a very simple, um, I selected the plane with a quick selection tool and cut it out. So you can see it's got some jagged edges here, but it doesn't have to be perfect. It just depends. If the plane's going to be in our face, very big, then you want a really nice cutout. I'm going to use something like the pen tool to do that. If not, I'm going to use a quick selection tool. This is interesting. Now we have to run into issues where this wing is cut off here. So maybe this is an asset that's at the bottom of our frame, or it's turned sideways or something like that. But it's something we have to keep in mind. And here's another U-2 spy plane. So those were really easy to find. And that is under military. I've also got miscellaneous here, which this is just like an oil rig crane type of setup. I just thought it was cool. Maybe we can use it. We've got paper, lots of different paper here. We've got dirty paper. These are images. I've got a huge texture library that I keep at all times on a hard drive. And because I use a lot of the same type of textures over and over again, right? It's part of my style. So I like to keep those things in a handy folder structure that I can come back to if I need to pull assets. So this is a really nice paper texture. It's not too over the top. It's got some really nice texture to it. Again, here's another one. A lot of times with these texture elements, it's easy to go over the top and find things that look too intense, and they can be too intense and overpowering in our style frame design. So it's all about layering, right? It's all about layering these different elements together. Here's some more interesting paper pieces. These are cutouts with alpha channels. Pretty cool stuff. We've got tapes, all different types of tape. We got these are all PNG files. So again, we can overlay these on our design assets. We can do transfer modes. We could cut out the white around them if we needed to. Just really cool assets. Some clear tape here. I think maybe I downloaded these from Envato Elements, which was easy to do. That's why I like about these different sites with stock media is you can quickly download assets and have access to them. So I'm using Dropbox, and these are not synced to my computer. So as soon as I do that and open them up, here you go. These are some assets I got from my buddy Ryan Figard for a texture pack we were working on. So those could come in handy. I believe these tapes down here might have been from Ryan as well. Let's take a look at these really quickly here. Yeah, these are from Ryan as well. He's a photographer and he's a great asset for textures. So those are tapes. We've also got just textures downloaded. These are from freepick.com. Really, really dig this texture a lot. It's really cool. Definitely can see it being used. Some crumpled sheet paper. Again, this is like, some graph. I talked about grids and graphs. That's why I downloaded this. What do we have here? This is an interesting texture. This could be too overpowering. I do have to be careful about that one. It could be too overpowering. Tiled stones. This is one that's really cool. I'm definitely going to use this one. I like the texture in the black as well as the lines, the vertical and the horizontal lines. Super cool stuff. And then when we get into actual countries, because this is the Cold War, this is a really cool picture of Kennedy. Now it is low res, and you can really see the loss of detail here, but it's a really cool image. American flag. It's not ideal because it's tinted on the yellow side, but we could always correct that, or we could try and use that tint in our image. Reagan, U.S. president, very involved in the Cold War, helped to bring it to an end. And then we've got a tank here, which I think I put it in the USA folder, but I don't actually know. I believe it's maybe not a USA tank. We've got some USSR, the flag, Soviet Union, Stalin, which I put that him down in the assets, socialism. This was a really cool image. If for anything, it just inspired me. Like I've seen a lot of designers create imagery that looks like this, where there's a bank of TVs basically, and they're showing all different types of imagery. So I can either use this for a style frame as like a base, or I can just use it to inspire me. That's why it's there. And that's it. That is concept one. And we've talked about concept two. So concept one is going to be more of a collage, is how I see it. A collage um, style frame. So that is how you concept a basic style frame design and how you start pulling assets. You get a basic idea in your head of what you want to show, or you base it off the creative brief. You start researching what type of imagery would be involved with that, what kind of creative reference do you want to use to inspire you. Then you pull assets. You write down assets of what you would like to use, and you start researching those assets and pulling those assets. And as you're doing that, you're going to find even more assets that relate to what you're trying to design. It's going to start taking you down almost a rabbit hole of different assets. Don't overdo it. Limit yourself to assets. I don't know how many I've got here, but it's not too many. Maybe it's 30, maybe 30 to 40. I wouldn't go over 50 assets for two style frames, because we are doing two separate style frames here. So that's how you get your concepting going. Okay, so that was fun. Now you're clear about how to concept and create digital assets for your style frames. And the next big question is, how do you use these concepting techniques and directions to actually build out the style frames? Hands down, this is the most important aspect of style frame designing. If you can't lay out the style frames in an interesting and beautiful way, then you will not be successful in style frame design. And this doesn't have to mean you have to work really hard at it. It's about working smart at it. And it's about getting a better result for as little work as possible, in my opinion. It's very possible, okay? It doesn't have to be challenging. So how do you lay out assets in style frame design? That's exactly what I'm going to show you in the next video. And it's going to blow your mind. I guarantee you're going to see how easy it is. So before we go today, I want to hear from you. Okay. I'd love to hear from you. Tell me, what would life look like for you if you could easily concept style frames? If you take what you learned today and apply it, what is life going to look like for you? How will life be different when you lay down that solid foundation for style frame design? How is it going to make your motion design life easier? Let me know in the comments below. And I'm going to read every one of these comments. I always do. And I'm going to respond to as many of these comments as possible. I promise you. And also, if you found this video useful, because this is a limited time video, I'm going to ask you, please share it on Facebook, share it on Twitter, share it to your social media groups. So what you've learned here today is a simple process for creating design assets for concepting. It's a game changer in helping you design pro level style frames. It's a key step. It's key step number one along the way in reaching your goal of becoming a style frame designer. And as motion designers, we all need to know how to design, okay? What you're going to learn in this workshop puts you on the path to getting to become a pro level motion designer, okay? Next up, we'll talk all about how to lay out the design assets in a process I call photo bashing, and it's fun. I can't wait to see you in the next video.